What? What? Oh, was I supposed to teach today? Just kidding. I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter. This is Come Follow Me, Get to the Point, where I always show up. I'm always prepared. We never take roll, and bring your own refreshments. Today is Holy Moses, Exodus 1 through 6. So, one of the problems about teaching about Moses is that we're all familiar with the story, so they become really boring by the repetition. We've heard it all before. We've seen the movies, whatever version of cinematic version of Moses you like. Oh, by the way, this is some interesting trivia. What do Batman and Moses have in common? Both Val Kilmer and Christian Bale have played Batman and Moses in the movies. That is really bizarre trivia. So let me move on to the point we're here to talk about the gospel. And I was thinking that maybe the best approach, because things are so familiar, that we just do a rapid bullet points. So this is what's going on. Starts out, there's a new Pharaoh in Egypt. So you deal with xenophobia, and also making sure that you're having strong political alliances, that when new people come to power, that we're nurturing, sorry, I'm adjusting the fan here, that we're nurturing new alliances with politicians as they come to power, that we can work with them, not be exploited or overrun. Let me see. Midwives. Importance of civil disobedience, appropriate civil disobedience, and also issues about right to life. These women protecting the children. Moses, he's born under the ban, and that reminds us that there's just never an ideal time for things to happen. C.S. Lewis wrote a essay called Learning in Wartime. I think it was a sermon he delivered, and said, look, there's never an ideal time, so just get busy. Never wait for perfect conditions. The Ark. Moses and the Ark. Arks are a symbol of a coffin, a tomb, deliverance, and resurrection. You think about Noah's Ark, Moses' Ark, and the Ark of the Covenant. That those are all three related in the symbol of resurrection and Christ's resurrection. Pharaoh's daughter adopts. God places people in certain positions, but also this puts Moses in the right position where he enters a court, and he learns things as being part of the Egyptian court, royalty. Moses' mother becomes a wet nurse. God's controlling things, making sure that his adopted mother and his real mother are both nurturing him. So he's learned in both the traditions, the Egyptian culture and also the Hebraic culture. Miriam watches the ark, importance of families sticking together. Moses sees the suffering, and he, even though he's a acculturated Egyptian, he still never loses contact with his people. And what's the appropriate reaction when you see people suffering, especially your own people? Moses kills the Egyptian and flees. I'm not sure about the legality of this. Was this a crime of passion? How you do this? Not imposing our current jurisprudence upon how the Egyptians did things. It's a different set of laws, so I really can't comment on that. So just kind of set that one aside. Moses flees, goes to Midian. Now, the Midianites were part of Abrahamic's family. It's his wife, Moses, one of Moses' wives, not Moses, but Abraham's wives, were related to the Midians. And so it's still staying within the broader covenant people. The well, that just keeps coming up in the Old Testament about the importance of wells and location and getting water in a desert area. The scattering of the flock. Think of Ammon in the Book of Mormon, where the sheep get scattered. And marriage. Moses marries Zipporah. He has the 7 daughters, and Moses marries the eldest one. And he starts a family. And you're just making sure that you're marrying in the covenant under priesthood authority, and you're marrying a good family. Now let's pause for a moment. You have the call and the refusal. There's the burning bush. That parallels the tree of life in Lehi's dream, and also the trees in the first vision, because Joseph Smith said the same thing, that when he saw the fire from heaven come down, he just thought in the back of his head that the trees are going to catch on fire, but as the fire came, the trees were not consumed, the same way that the burning bush was not consumed by the fire. And pay attention to the Joseph Smith translation, is that it was God's presence and not an angel. So God was physically there, and this wasn't delegated. And there's some technical Septuagint reasons why that was rendered that way, but I think we kind of understand that the Bible is not translated correctly, and there's problems with the biblical text. God issues a call. Moses refuses the call. That's interesting because we get these internet debates about, okay, should you not accept a calling? I always think it's always kind of interesting because if you understand foreordination and inspiration, it's a funny question to ask, and that the question arises from someone just doesn't want to do something, and can we come up with a good way not to do it in good conscience? Now, there's when you get a call, of course, you explain circumstances to the leader, saying, okay, this is what's going on with my family. My wife has health issues. I have a job situation, just so you understand this with the calling going on. But should you refuse a calling? Okay, let's see what happens when Moses refuses a calling. Da-da-da-da-da. Oops, sorry, my notes slipped over. This is a bad day, but the story's still good with Moses, and that's what really counts. So Moses has the rod, and it's a symbol of his power. And then you have the miracle of the rod turning into a serpent. Then you have the miracle of the hand turning leprous. And you have the water and blood miracles are getting mentioned. And you think about that in terms of the curses, and also think about that in terms of Moses 1, which we have more, and we don't know where Moses 1 fits in with all of this, how it came on. Now Moses is getting more information, how he'd have power over many waters, and that he's showing all the particles of the earth, and he gets an understanding of how basic elemental chemistry works, and that just may be tied with how the miracles are worked, and Moses may have needed that information to work all these really complex miracles, frogs, etc. So another thing with refusal of the call was being slow of speech. So that reminds us of Enoch, and also of the gift of tongues. Like I said, I'm doing bullet points, point and counterpoint type thing, just because we're really familiar with this, and I want to like I said, this is called get to the point, so let's do things really quickly without getting bogged down in weird details. I kind of had a problem with that. I get gummed up with stuff. So Jethro gives Moses the priesthood, and that's where the lineage comes from, because he's a priest of it. Then you have the issue of Moses' wife performing the circumcision, and that's one where you just have to pay attention to details and not let things slide. I mean, we get this discussion sometimes in testimony meetings about how prophets aren't perfect. It's like, yeah, anyone who's read the scriptures understands that. So I'm not sure why you're bringing that up for a certain reason. You're bringing that up. You're doing it for a reason, but it's something we know already. So let's move on to the next point, is that where Moses meets Aaron at Sinai. There's maybe more going on here where Moses explains what's going on to Aaron. This may be where the vision in Moses 1 happens. But just don't get bogged down as some of the details get kind of confusing, because this is just kind of like what I'm doing. This is just get to the point and doing stuff a little bit quicker. And sometimes we drop stuff that we'd rather have. So you have the visit of Moses visits Pharaoh, and it's the first visit. And what happens is that Moses asks to set his people free. Pharaoh tells him to take a flying leap. The kind of question is, which God do you worship? Do you worship Pharaoh? Is Pharaoh in control? Or is Jehovah in control, who Moses represents? Then you have the issue of retaliation, where Pharaoh says, okay, we're going to keep the quota of bricks the same, because the Israelites are making bricks. But on top of keeping the bricks the same, they have to go gather their own straw to make the bricks. And when they can't keep up the quota, the accusation is, okay, you're being lazy. That sounds really familiar, where someone causes their own problems and scapegoats the victims. Yeah, just goes on in the past, goes on now. You also have the issue of trying to free people. It just doesn't happen in one fell swoop. So it reminds us of Nephi when he tries to get the brass plates. It's an ongoing process. You just don't get it done quickly. Now, another issue comes up is with the name of God, and you have to read the Joseph Smith translation, because it seems like people didn't know the name of God, and that's when you see the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston. That worked its way into a script, but that's, like I said, that's just a problem with the biblical text, not a problem with the theology that I knew what God's name was, and they did ordinances in God's name, as we read in the book of Moses back in Adam's day. But also kind of think about this, about the importance of names, about identification, but also describing characteristics. And for fans of Harry Potter, why didn't they mention Voldemort's name? And it's tied with the same issue about God's name. So the quota gets raised, and people get mad at Moses, and we do the exact same thing today. So we shouldn't complain about that. Then there's a section on genealogy. So really quick, wow, here we're at 9 minutes. We've reached the Christ quotient. So we're learning about Jesus Christ in this section. Well, first of all, there's the obvious parallels between Moses and Jesus Christ, but being called, issuing the call, being rejected by their people, the ark, the resurrection, the family involvement, but also read ourselves as the parallels between Moses and ourselves about with our calls. Do we refuse calls, and are we causing problems by not accepting callings? Think about Christ when Christ refused to call, let this cup pass. Another thing, too, to think about is the iterative approach to solving problems. What happens in the church is you'll show up to a presidency or a bishopric meeting. The leader will say, here's this problem. And you'll try and solve a problem with one solution during that brief time, like the 5 minutes that's allocated on the agenda. Then you move on to planning a pancake breakfast. And, that just doesn't work when you have problems. It's an iterative process. It takes time, and you're changing your approach. And in fact, in the 1970s, President Spencer W. Kimball gave this address to regional representatives, and he asked, okay, do we have to do things the way that we're doing them? Can we change how we're doing things in order to improve them? Because we get caught in these rote ruts so that we just go through the motions of when you think, okay, this process, and it's like, well, let's change the process and see if we get different results. Because we get into that a lot. That we think that, okay, we do things this way and we'll get the certain results. They don't work, but we just keep getting stuck on the process, kind of really an idiotized roteness. And you understand with the Moses that you have to change your approach and keep at it over and over again to get the children of Israel free. And the last thing to do that is the understanding about how both Christ and Moses are mediators of a covenant. Moses is the mediator of the old covenant, and Jesus Christ is the mediator of the new covenant. And you need to understand what a mediator is. And that's the point of it. Thank you, and have fun studying the life of Moses.